yeah, it's been a really, really important week for the team. Their talent is huge, and a lot now comes down to them. You know, it's ruthless, high-level sport, and especially in a football culture like here in England, there's no hiding place.
Ed, after such a disappointing weekend, what's the mood been like this week? What's the response been like?
It's been a big moment for the team, a really big moment for the team, because I think just what happened last weekend, that performance has come off the back of 2 or 3, I think it was 3 games before that where we hadn't won. And so I think it makes the result and the performance away to Oxford even worse, because the context was, before that was negative. But so it makes everything even worse to turn up after those 3 games without having won, and to put in that performance and to show what we showed there, and to be so fragile and so weak, has meant that, yeah, it's been a really, really important week for the team. And we've had to set everything straight again and give the players an explanation. It wasn't a time for the players to, to start trying find excuses or explanations. It's not that. It was us telling the players, what hasn't been good enough, what wasn't good enough, and make it very clear what has to be done this weekend, but not just this weekend, but in the last 3 games after this weekend as well. And it's also important that it's not the first time this has happened this season. Just before I came in, I think it was a 7 or 8 game streak that the team hadn't won. And I think right at the start of the season, there was another 4 game streak where they hadn't won. And those aren't the standards that we want to be setting at Watford FC. So, as I say, it's been a big week. The standards we've had to reset and redefine have been very clear. And just now, enough talking has been done, and we've got to turn up at the Vic on Saturday.
Matty Pollock's comment afterwards, I'm sure you've seen them calling it a disgrace, and the fact they got bullied, and that it keeps happening. It was almost expected. They were really strong, weren't they? And the players have to stand up and be counted here. Do they have to almost get together themselves internally and work it out themselves?
That's part of it, absolutely. Yeah, and when a player like Matty Pollock, we all know who he is, what he stands for, what he's already given this club, and for him to say that that's one of his worst moments, if not the worst moment in a Watford shirt, those are big words. And I think that says a lot about, what happened. And I think it says a lot also about previous seasons, how just people expect that this is kind of normal end of season for Watford, which just makes me angry, to be honest, to know that we've just played along to that narrative again.
Have you had any guidance from Gianna Kanani or Valon Barami this week?
Normal conversations, normal discussions and exchanges with them. So nothing different to previous weeks.
Because we know what it's like here at Watford. They've always said if the coach isn't improving the team, then there may be changes. So, I mean, you yourself are going to need to get some results as well, aren't you?
No, and I know that. I knew exactly, what I was walking into when I've turned up here. And I knew that I was the 3rd or 4th head coach or manager this season. See it how you will, 2 full-time, 1 interim with Charlie, and then me coming in, so the 4th one. I know that. I'm very, down to earth about it. I'm not kidding myself or kidding anyone else about it. And that's been very open also with the players. So, yeah, just the facts. And as I said, there's been a lot of talking and a lot of outside noise and now inside talks as well. And we've got to deliver.
And deliver for the fans as well, who want to see a response, obviously, on Saturday.
100%. And that's, out of all of this, the normal discussions and questions that are raised about my position, all of the talk about the players, that this is the worst moment for the fans themselves, because there's nothing worse than being a fan, being embarrassed or disappointed or let down by your own team, your own club is just a terrible feeling, especially when a season ends. So no, I mean, that is the first thing we have to do, is to turn up there and to deliver at the Vic on Saturday afternoon.
Have you ever experienced anything like that at the end at Oxford?
Unfortunately, yeah. Unfortunately, I've been in relegation battles previously, which are, totally different kind of pressure. I've already been in really big clubs when a couple of games haven't been won and there's pressure straight away as a head coach, as an assistant. So I've experienced it before, and it's been managed in different ways. And so no, I mean I do have that experience, and I know what it takes to turn it around.
I suppose for some of the younger players like Maamma and maybe Irankunda, they may have been a bit surprised at that response for being young. They may have not experienced it themselves. And actually those two did pretty well on Saturday, but they're going to have to deal with that as a professional footballer because it goes on.
Absolutely. I mean, it shows that when you're not on it, it's ruthless, high level sport. And especially in a football culture like here in England, there's no hiding place. And if you don't deliver that, that's what's normal. And they were good. Othmane Maamma has come on and has shown how much we missed him. And it's great that he's got a full training week now under his belt and that he's back in contention for Saturday's game. Nestory has been one of our brightest sparks. But it's still, one of the points that we all have to improve is that actually it's not just about fighting in second balls and being soft. All of the chances we conceded away to Oxford have come from set pieces, which has been one of our strengths since I've come in. And there, how we didn't deal with that threat was shocking. But on the other hand, there's nobody here who's got 15 goals. There's nobody here who's got 10 assists. And I said to the players very openly, how many here are in the championship team of the season? And so at some point, we players individually, all of us, we've got to stand out, we've got to be counted. And then, we can say something. But until that moment, there's, nobody can say anything. Even, Irankunda, number of goals for the talent that he's got, he can be, leading the line with even more impact than what he has done.
Would Maamma be sharp enough to start on Saturday if you so wished?
I think there's a possibility, yes. We know that he's probably not got 90 or 100 minutes in his legs, but in terms of his medical condition, he's fully fit. It's just the physical side of it. Is it maybe a week too soon to put him in the starting lineup or not? We need to see again tomorrow how his freshness is and how he's coped with the last few days, which have been heavy.
And is Baah closer to a start up front? Not quite working out at the moment with Kieran Go. We've spoken about that in the past, but Baah has been coming on lately. Is there an opportunity for him maybe?
Yeah, he's also pushing. And I think with him, even more than anybody else, we're just a little bit extra cautious to make sure that we're putting him in the best conditions to be able to not just perform but also stay fit over time. So he's had a good training week. It's been really good also to have a fully fit Jack Greaves back on training. He's now completed 2 full training weeks. He'll be playing with the under-21s in the next few days, which is really positive for him. One of our academy graduates to be back in full training and pushing is a big thing for us. So that's positive. And we'll also be recovering Ngaki and Bola. They've trained fully this week. They're further behind Othmane Maamma, for example. They're probably a couple of weeks behind him. So for them, it's a decision: are they ready for the bench, and are they ready for minutes already, or is it maybe Tuesday or next Saturday? So those are the kind of the final decisions that we'll have to take tomorrow.
And to be fair, losing Bola has been a huge loss because you don't have any other left back, which is a problem and has been a problem.
I'd even say it's actually Stefan Fooni as well. Stefan Fooni. We all spoke about how good he was and how, what a bright future and how he was going to play for country and everything. And then, that's been a big loss. And then you lose Bola on top of that. I think we can all agree that Ngaki is one of the best right backs in the competition. And so he's been a big miss as well. Othmane Maamma has been one of the real game changers for the team all season. And his injury has been a big miss. So no, we know exactly the players that have been missing and the quality that we've missed.
And to be fair, the last time at Vicarage Road, you should have beaten Charlton quite comfortably. So if you put in another performance like that, then it should be 3 points.
I mean, that's the minimum standard, definitely. Yeah, the performance against Charlton was overall a positive one. We missed a little bit of cutting edge, and to convert however many chances we did create that day. But those are the standards that we look at.
It's interesting and quite ironic that you come up against a Sheffield United side managed by Chris Wilder, who almost 3 years to the day spoke of Watford needing a cultural reset. Whether that's occurred, I'm not so sure, but it's funny how this cycle sort of keeps carrying on.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's one of the things that has riled me this week. Coming in and listening to people, this is Watford. This is what Watford does at the end of the season, which just, I mean, I was angry and disappointed at the end of the game, but to hear that just makes it worse. And it's when something happens repeatedly over 6, 7, 8 seasons, and I've seen the numbers, I've seen the number of games and the number of wins and all of that. I mean, there's a pattern there, and yeah, there are lots of factors that explain the last 4 games and the last 4 results. But still, just it's that moment also this week where, let's close that chapter, close that book. And how do we respond now at home against Sheffield?
How does that change though, Ed? You've spoken about being so annoyed about it, but how does that change?
It's not just about the end of season running. It's also the consistency throughout the season. And as I said, having those runs of games throughout the season where either the teams, a few defeats on the bounce or, 4 games without a win, 7, 8 games without a win. It's also that level of consistency which helps come the latter end of the season where the team's going to be stronger. But it's also the disparities in performances throughout the season. Some games where, and even just in my time when I've been here, I don't know how many games it is now, but there's some performances have been terrific. Wrexham at home were fantastic. Derby at home. You could comfortably speak of not just pushing for playoffs, but more than that. But then the difference between that and a couple of the away performances, such as Oxford or QPR, where you can't recognise the team. And of course, again, I'm not going to hark back to the injuries, but it is more than that. And it's that consistency that you need to strive for from day one that will help you come the end of the season.
This kind of the attitude of the supporters, is this endemic in football or is this just a Watford thing? Because it feels it's almost getting a bit toxic. But is that the state of football in general, do you think?
It's football everywhere.
Yeah.
And I've travelled to many countries, in Europe, out of Europe, top teams, smaller clubs, big fan bases, all of it. It's people and supporters care for their club, and there's a feeling that, we have a right to say something and we can express it however we want. A lot is done on social media. I'm grateful not to be on social media, but I honestly think it's fine, it's normal. And I spoke to a few of the fans at the end of the game, and we're there to take that blame, and then it's also for us afterwards to react to it. So no, and I think also there's always that line in English football culture which is not crossed, which happens sometimes in Europe. So I've seen much worse, and there's also I think that needs to be said, that people have said, it was an overreaction. It wasn't. Watford fans care for their club, and what they did at the end of the game was just, I would say they were entitled to it.
And just final one, Sheffield United, who are below you, and then you look through their team and Hamer and O'Hare and Brooks and Bamford, there's some amazing talent there, and yet they've struggled all season.
Really, really good players. Some big transfer fees have been paid. Big club. Really experienced manager. So it's going to be a really tough game again. And we know that we'll need to be at our best to get the result that we want to get.
Just one more. Obviously, we talked about what Matty Pollock said after the game last week. Do you feel like you have enough leaders and standard setters in the dressing room to really... Is that maybe a factor behind the inconsistency, the lack of them, or do you sense enough leadership and character in the squad?
Leadership is changing. Leadership today is different to what leadership was 10, 15, 20 years ago. I look at the makeup of all teams. There are so many really good examples, even in the Premier League. Teams right at the top of the Premier League where leadership looks different to what it used to. I'm not going to talk about whether we have enough or not enough, because the team is what it is today. It's about us getting the best out of it now. Once we get to the end of the season, and then, there's actually an opportunity to potentially change the squad. then is the moment to have talks and to even publicly discuss, what the leadership here looks like. And it's also up to you as a head coach and a manager to be able to adapt to whatever leadership you have in the team. And that falls on me and falls on my staff as well. So, I'm not going to go into more than that at this stage.
I just wanted to touch back on Nestory Irankunda. I know you've only been working with him a couple of months. Just on the potential he has and how high his ceiling is.
Huge potential. The fact that he's already been at Bayern Munich, I think, says a huge amount. And it's similar to the narrative with Stefan Funi we had a couple of months back. Their talent is huge. And a lot now comes down to them. How they manage that, the standards that they set themselves every day. And how they can, a little bit like us collectively, how they can create the consistency day in, day out on the training pitch, and then from game to game to be really good. And I think Nestory's season has been a little bit stop-start and up and down. I'm really pleased. One of the things that I pride myself on is individual player development, and to see how Irankunda has developed over the past few weeks and has been much more impactful and has started to really change games, not just from kind of one or two actions, but actually from goals as well, is really important. So, no, his ceiling is wherever he sets his ceiling to be. And I think it is really as simple as that.
Obviously, first season for him in England. Do you reckon next season he's got a season under his belt, he could hit that consistency next season, be a real leader for Watford?
Definitely. No doubt about that. And, he needs that little bit of time. But, he's got all of the qualities, both technically, to make a difference. We can all see that he needs the smallest of windows to be able to get a shot off, and the quality of his shooting is fantastic. His physical impact on game is huge. And he's still got, there are still working points. His defensive intensity at times can be better. His defensive discipline can be better. Also his composure in the last 10, 15 metres. It seems easier for him to score from 25, 30 metres than it does from 10 or 15 sometimes. And so I just think it's really positive to see how he's grown in the past month or so, and how his performances have pushed on. And he will definitely be better next season.
Obviously, you've just mentioned he can score some spectacular goals. Have you worked with anyone who can strike a ball that well from outside the box?
Marko Arnautovic, who've got a pretty good strike on him. He was a really, really good example. So he's one who stands out. But no, I've been lucky enough to work with a few quality players who could shoot from distance.
We've got the World Cup coming up. Obviously, he's the big star for the Socceroos. Do you think this is a real chance for him in the upcoming World Cup to make a name on the world stage?
It could be. We've seen it happen before. I don't want to build him up too much, because actually a lot will come down to how he finishes this season as well. The momentum that he can create for himself, to finish the season on a high and then to take that positive momentum into the World Cup will be really helpful to it.